As the 2022 college football season finally starts to come to an end, we are seeing more players declare for the draft and more bowl games finish. Pretty soon, everyone's going to be talking about this draft class, the quarterbacks, and where prospects are going to go. In today's video, we're going to talk about this year's quarterback class. We all know Stroud and Bryce Young are more than likely the top two quarterbacks, but outside of them, who is in this draft class, and honestly, who is that third best quarterback? In today's video, I want to talk about 7 quarterback prospects who have an argument, big or small, to be that third best quarterback prospect in this year's draft. We're going to go through who they are, how good I think they could be, and my thoughts on them. But before we get started, we're so close to 100K, so be sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like if you want to support today's video, let me know what topic I should do next, and turn on notifications so you never miss when I upload. Now, let's get started. The first guy I want to talk about is Hendon Hooker. I've talked about this guy many times on my channel, but in case you didn't know, Hendon Hooker is the son of a former NCAA lelegend, and Hooker blossomed into a 4-star recruit. He was part of the class of 2017 and ended up at Virginia Tech. He ended up starting 2 seasons, 2019 was his best, before he decided to transfer over to Tennessee with Coach Heupel. At first, he was second string behind Joe Milton, but he took over after the Pitt game and threw for nearly 3,000 yards with 31 touchdowns. He had monster hype going into the 2022 season, and he lived up to it. He ended up passing for 3,135 yards with 27 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions. He had an incredible game against Alabama, and for a while looked like he was going to win the Heisman Trophy. Unfortunately, he ended up tearing his ACL against South Carolina, and while they wouldn't have won that game, this was a big blow to Hooker's Heisman chances, and it's going to hurt him in the NFL. The guy has put up big stats, has a good arm, and has good size, but people were worried about his durability. He's already 24 years old, and there are questions about Josh Heupel's system. I'd honestly have Hooker as the 5th best prospect. The next guy we need to talk about is also from the SEC East, as he was the quarterback for the Florida Gators. Coming out of Gainesville, Florida, Anthony Richardson was a 4-star recruit and pledged to play for Dan Mullen. Mullen was expected to get the most out of Richardson, but unfortunately, Richardson was stuck behind Emory Jones. While he showed immense flash in 2021, he never handed over the starting job to him. Last year he combined for 9 touchdowns, but it was more so the it factor and some of the highlight level plays he had. When Dan Mullen left and Emory Jones went to Arizona State, Richardson became the full-time starter. This season he threw for 2,549 yards with 17 touchdowns and 9 picks, and had 654 yards and 9 scores on the ground. His completion percentage was awful at 53.8. There were a lot of games where he just disappeared, and many are worried if his arm will even translate to the NFL. But all the hype surrounding Richardson is because of his potential. Scouts are saying this guy's a 2 to 3 year project, and if he pans out, he could potentially be the best quarterback in this class. Richardson is your typical boom or bust prospect, and currently, just because of how high his ceiling is, I have him as the 4th best quarterback in this year's draft. The next guy we need to talk about is Jaren Hall. Coming out of Maple Mountain High School in Utah, Hall decided to commit to BYU. He was a number 20 dual threat quarterback and a 3-star recruit in the class of 2016. He's been in college for quite some time, but he did go to BYU, so he gets a pass. While backing up Zach Wilson for a little while, Hall would eventually take over as the full-time starter in 2021. He threw for 2,500 yards with 20 touchdowns and 5 picks last year, putting himself on the NFL draft radar. This season, he bounced back and actually improved in every category. His completion percentage went up, he threw for 3,171 yards, had 31 touchdowns, and had a higher quarterback rating. Hall is considered an experienced quarterback who's dynamic, athletic, and protects the football. Plus, he has a ton of experience, and mentally, it seems like he has that it factor to him. One of the problems with him is his old age, and he just doesn't have that much upside. He still has the tools to be an NFL starter, which is why I currently have him as the 6th best quarterback in this year's draft class. The next guy I want to talk about is Jake Haener. Coming out of Monte Vista High School in California, Haener originally pledged to Washington. He was a 3-star recruit and was part of the class of 2017, but after not really seeing the field at Washington, he decided to transfer and went to Fresno State. His best season came in 2021 when he threw for 4,000 yards and 33 touchdowns, and then famously entered the portal and went up to Washington to follow his head coach Kalen DeBoer. Except he decided to go back to Fresno State, and this year he had a little bit of a disappointing season. His numbers went down. He only threw for 2,616 yards with 18 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. He did get more accurate and he turned the ball over less, but he had less touchdowns and he had less yards. Fresno State ended up winning the Mountain West title though, and Haener's one of those guys that's been putting up numbers for a couple of years now, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him get drafted, but in my eyes, he's the 10th best prospect right now. Next up, I want to talk about Jaden Daniels. He was a borderline 5-star recruit coming out of high school and originally decided to go with Herm Edwards at Arizona State. He ended up starting as a true freshman where he went off. He He had nearly 3,000 passing yards with 17 touchdowns and 2 picks, and also was a dual threat on the ground. 2020 was extremely disappointing for him, but they did play in very limited games. 2021 was the big make-or-break year for Daniels, and he was awful. He threw 10 touchdowns compared to 10 interceptions, and Arizona State was not any good. Looking for a new home, he decided to transfer across the country, and Brian Kelly happily took him in at LSU. He ended up beating out Garrett Nussmeier and Walker Howard for the starting job, and he had a really good season. He threw for 2,774 yards with 16 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. He also ran for 800 yards and 11 touchdowns on the ground, and he was truly a dual threat. Daniels has an arm, he has a lot of experience, and he's super athletic, so I think he'll have a chance in the NFL, but I'm just worried about his durability and how high of a ceiling he really has. Either way though, Daniels is my 8th best prospect right now. I feel like it wouldn't be right to make a video without mentioning Stetson Bennett. According to Mel Kiper, Bennett is the number 9 quarterback in the 2023 draft. Was he just doing this to get clicks and attention? I don't know, but I guess we'll just take him seriously and at least throw Stetson into the mix here. Over the last 2 years, there have been 9 quarterbacks taken, as it was Ian Book in 2021 and Brock Purdy in 2022. Book got a chance to start with the Saints, and Purdy is starting for the Niners, so maybe Stetson Bennett will get a chance to do this. After spending an eternity at Georgia, Bennett does have a small chance of getting there. Last year, he threw for nearly 3,000 yards and 29 touchdowns while being extremely accurate and limiting turnovers. This year, he put up similar numbers as he had a career-high 3,500 passing yards with 20 touchdowns and 6 picks. He also has a national title, has been a terrific game manager, and has good arm strength. One of the problems for him is his frame. He doesn't have much of a ceiling, he'll be 25 years old, and he just really hasn't been that great at Georgia either. He's the classic case of a good college quarterback, and we'll see if he gets a chance in the NFL. I don't really know what I think of Stetson Bennett, but for the heck of it, let's put him at number 9. The second to last guy we're to talk about in today's video is Cameron Rising. Coming out of Newbury Park High School in California, Rising originally committed to Oklahoma before he would later flip to Texas. According to 24/7 Sports, he was a 4-star recruit and the 11th best pro-style quarterback in the class of 2018, but he never really got much of a chance at Texas. He literally didn't register a stat. After the 2019 season, he would transfer to Utah, where he was the backup going into the 2021 season. He'd eventually take over for Charlie Brewer and had a breakout season. He led Utah to a ton of wins and threw for 2,493 yards with 20 touchdowns and 5 picks. He introduced himself to the NFL draft radar, but decided to come back and try and improve his stock. This year, I think he did that. He ended up throwing for 2,939 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 7 picks, while having over 400 yards on the ground and 6 scores there. He became more accurate and showcased a lot of great NFL attributes. While he has good size and a good arm, many are worried about his transition to the NFL and just don't think his upside is that much. I think he's a typical middle tier prospect, and I'd have him at number 7 right now. The last guy we're to talk about is who is the 3rd best quarterback prospect in this year's draft, and that is Will Levis. I'd almost say that Levis is one of the most hated prospects of the last few years. Coming out of Connecticut, he was only a 3-star recruit and decided to go to Penn State. After being stuck behind Sean Clifford, he eventually transferred to Kentucky, where he won the starting job. Last year, he broke out onto the scene with nearly 3,000 passing yards and 24 touchdowns, but he did have a lot of interceptions. This past year, he threw for 2,406 yards with 19 touchdowns and 10 picks, while completing 65% of his passes. Honestly, those numbers don't really pop off the page, as he still struggled holding onto the ball, didn't win a lot of big games, and didn't have that many wow performances. But I'm not a scout. Schools love his cannon for an arm, they love his build, and they love his ability to produce on the ground and make something out of nothing. There are some reports that some franchises believe he's the best prospect in this year's draft, and I just don't believe it. I think Levis is fine, and I think he'll be an NFL starter, but personally I don't think he's super magnificent, but he probably is the safest player to be that 3rd overall prospect. There are some other guys I do want to mention before we end this video, as I'm pretty sure Bo Nix is returning to school, which is why I did not put him on the list. Tanner McKee is a guy I'm not super high on. Aiden O'Connell put up numbers at Purdue, but I think he'll be an undrafted free agent. Clayton Tune led the country in passing yards for Houston, and will also probably get an undrafted free agent look, and then the same thing can be said for Max Duggan. There are definitely some other guys you could bring up, but overall my list is as followed. Number 1, Bryce Young. Number 2, CJ Stroud. Number 3, Will Levis. Number 4, Anthony Richardson. Number 5, Hendon Hooker. Number 6, Jaren Hall. Number 7, Cam Rising. Number 8, Jaden Daniels. Number 9, Stetson Bennett. And number 10, Jake Haener. I'm just kidding about the Bennett part. I would put Tanner McKee there. But what do you guys think? Who is your favorite quarterback prospect in this year's draft? What do you think of my list? And what is your bold prediction for this year's quarterback class? Be sure to let me know down below. Let me know what player, team, or topic I can cover next. Subscribe if you're new, and check out all my videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.